Welcome to Inside the Firm, a podcast dedicated to small business owners and hosted by entrepreneurs, Alex Gore and Lance Cayko. Each week, they take you on their journey of how to start, run, and grow a business by bringing you inside their architecture and real estate development firm. Get a behind-the-scenes tour of how these business leaders manage their clients and foster company culture while creating new and innovative projects. And now your hosts, Alex Gore and Lance Cayko.
This special episode of Inside the Firm was brought to you by ArcCat. ArcCat.com is the place to go when the time has come for your firm to begin gathering product and material information for your next project. Let's say you're tasked with finding the top window manufacturers and they need to have CAD, BIM, and specifications. Wouldn't it be nice if there was a search engine that showed you who has the data you need? There is. It's Archcat.com, the #1 most used website for finding building product information. Search for a product or even a CSI section and get a list of manufacturers and the data they offer. Even better, you can download all that technical data for free. You don't even have to register to use Archcat. Save your firm time, money, and frustration and go to Archcat.com to start building better content today. That's ARCAT.com. This episode was also brought to you by Dell. As a Dell partner, Inside the Firm listeners and their firms are eligible for valuable discounts up to an additional 8% off on Dell technology products and services. So what are you waiting for? Visit Dell.com/inside the firm. That's Dell.com/inside the firm and select the technology you need to fuel your business. You can also call our Dell team at 1-800-757-8442. That's 1-800-757-8442. And don't forget about their partner outreach program that allows Inside the Firm listeners to get complimentary on-site tech consultations from Dell's account executives. You can learn more about the program at Dell.com/outreach. Enjoy the show.
All right, welcome to Inside the Firm. I'm here with a very special guest, Bryon McCartney, who is a managing partner and the chief idea guy at Archmark, which is short for Architect Branding and Marketing in Estero, Florida. Over the past few years, the Archmark team has worked with a growing number of firms in Florida, as well as several AIA chapters. Over the past year, they have reviewed and tested more than 380 architecture firm websites. What they learned helped them better understand the challenges that architects face and made them see that firms have great opportunities to stand out and differentiate themselves. Archmark's approach to architect branding and marketing centers around their 3-step client attraction system, which helps architects create a great first impression, communicate value and expertise, and find and attract their ideal clients using branding, digital marketing, and website design. Bryon has been a featured speaker at numerous industry events. He has appeared on podcasts, including one of our great friends, Mark LePage's Entre Architect podcast, and he regularly contributes articles for AIA and SMPS chapters. So, Bryon, without further ado, why don't you kind of give us a little bit deeper intro about yourself? Thanks for being on. About how your background as a young kid who was influenced by his grandfather, and then sort of how you transitioned to where you guys are at now with Archmark.
Well, thanks, Lance, for having me on. I'm really excited about being here and being on Inside the Firm. I've listened to you guys for a while now and really enjoy your show. So kudos to you for putting together such great content and sharing this with architects. I think it's a really great resource. I kind of grew up around construction. So my grandfather was in the construction industry. He worked for a large national firm and would often travel around the country to work on big projects and so forth. And I got to spend a lot of time with him on job sites and things like that when I was growing up. He was a woodworker, so we often, when I was a kid, it was really funny. He had this notebook in his shop, and he would hand me the notebook, and he would tell me to, draw something or design something, and then we would figure out how to build it. So I always had this kind of love of, kind of designing and tinkering, in the shop with my grandfather as a kid. And as I grew up, I started to look for pathways to kind of explore design more on a professional level. And I ended up going to school for graphic design. I went to Ohio University in Southern Ohio. And the school that I went to was very heavily influenced by the principles of the Bauhaus. So when I graduated, I moved to Chicago because at that time, that's like if you wanted to be a good designer, you went to Chicago. There was a lot of work there and a lot of exciting firms to be involved with. I don't want to date myself too much here, but it was a good time to be a graphic designer in Chicago. And when I went to Chicago, I knew about the Bauhaus and Mies van der Rohe and Mahaly Naj and all these guys, and so I got around to the city quite a lot, just checking out the architecture and the design, and it really influenced me a lot in my early career. I worked in design, graphic design, branding, and marketing in Chicago for about 10 years. And then I got the opportunity to move to Zurich, Switzerland. My wife's firm that she worked with, she was in PR at the time. They wanted to start an office in Europe, and she was asked to move to Switzerland and help get this new business off the ground. So we got to move to Switzerland. I got to work with a lot of great companies through the agency that I worked at in Switzerland. And then we spent about 12 years there. Ultimately came back to the U.S., set up a new business here. And then about 5 years ago, I think it was, I'd always had this interest in architecture and whatever. And one of the guys in our office building was an architect, and got to know him a little bit. And after a while, he asked us to help him out with his branding and marketing. And that kind of started things off for us in terms of architecture and kind of founding Archmark. So ever since then, we've kind of been, that kind of started us, nudging us towards thinking about architects and how we could help them. And since then, we've just been focused on reaching out to more and more architects, learning more and more about their world. And that's blossomed into developing a good number of clients in architecture that we've been able to help over the last few years.
So that's an interesting background. I think, it's sort of like in a sense, happenstance that you were in the same office, and then it started to feel like it was a very organic transition to you helping architects. So now that it's less organic in the sense that that it's your focus, how do you get involved with working with architects? Are you reaching out to them? Are you finding them? How does that transition? How does that usually happen?
Well, it's gone both ways. Initially, when we decided to focus on architects, it was really about trying to get the word out. We approached AIA chapters here in the state of Florida, developed relationships with a few of them. That got us in front of architects. We had opportunities to speak and to start building some rapport. I think when, about a year and a half ago, we were invited to speak at AIA Florida. We got the invitation a year and a half ago, and we did that this past July. And when that happened, we kind of realized, well, we really need to figure out what we're going to tell them and how we're going to design this presentation for architects. And then in the course of doing that, we realized that we had quite a lot of good content that was relevant to architects. And that's when we started reaching out to people like Mark to get on his podcast. And I've also done a presentation for Mark LePage's group for his community, his member community as well. And And then we started figuring out, well, we have this other content that we could turn into articles. So we reached out to different publications, and it just kind of grew from there. So we are reaching out to architects directly. I reach out to a lot of architects on LinkedIn, and then we also have a lot of architects contacting us through these articles and appearances that we have as well.
Oh, good deal. So, all right. Well, once you then engage with any architect, whether you reach out to them or they reach out to you, and you guys have a working agreement in order, I assume. Tell us about some of the biggest challenges that you face when you're helping an architect rebrand. I know to me that's a scary endeavor. I honestly can't imagine going into an architect's office and going, okay, here's what you're doing wrong. Because a lot of architects are like engineers where, hey, we know it all, and we're already good at design, so why are you in here, Mr. Designer, telling me what to do? Maybe that's not even a problem, but tell us about some of those challenges.
So I don't know if that's my dog or if that's
That's my dog. It's my dog.
Okay.
Yeah. Everybody listening to the
I
podcast know when I do one of these interviews, it's the dogs are going to get heard. So.
Okay, well, good. I won't feel bad if my dog barks. Anyway, the biggest challenge in working with architects is when it comes to branding, and I'll talk about both branding and marketing because there are challenges when it comes to both of those things. For branding, I think it's getting beyond the idea that your brand is a logo and therefore a design problem, because generally it's not. Your brand, I think, well, let's put it this way. Jeff Bezos put it bluntly. Your brand is what people say about you when you leave the room. It's that perception that people have of your firm. So in that sense, everything you do, everything you say as a firm can have an impact on your brand. A friend of mine, Reeve Perez, has a branding company called For the People, and he likes to say, sorry, I'm having a brain moment here, but the brand is really about it's that perception. So you don't really own it, right? You can't own a perception. You have to
exactly.
You can only influence it, and so all of those things that you do have to influence that perception. And number one, you've got to know what perception you're trying to create. So if you don't do that work to clarify that, and that's what we really try to get at when we're going in and we're talking about branding, is we're trying to clarify, okay, what is it that we're about? What is it that makes us different? How are we going to influence that perception? Then from there, and from that perspective, you're not thinking about design, you're thinking about perception. So the design comes actually towards the end of that process. And by then, most clients are, when they're seeing it through that different lens, it's much more easy for them to say, okay, I understand where we're at now. I understand what we're trying to achieve. And they're a lot more trusting of you by that point as well. With marketing, I think it's another issue entirely. The truth is, most architects don't believe in marketing. Most
crazy.
Architects, most architects believe that if they design good work and show that work off on their website, have a nice portfolio, that people are going to show up at their doorstep, and that's just not the case. You have to have a plan for sharing what you do with the world, for communicating the value that you're going to provide to potential clients. The firms that succeed are the ones that are keenly aware of that and know how to demonstrate, for lack of a better word, their ROI, right? We can solve these problems for you. That's what clients want to know. And if you can't do that through your marketing, through your website, through your sales sheet, whatever, then people aren't going to get it. Just to emphasize this point, your website, which a lot of architects we come across, they don't really understand the importance of their website. We've seen, we've looked at, you said 380. I think we're up to 405 now websites that we've looked at and tested. One of the main reasons we went and did that study and why we continue to do that work is that there's a statistics from Hinge Marketing, which has done a lot of work in the AEC buying research area. 84% of AEC buyers are visiting your website before they contact you. And if they can't get some of the answers that they need, some of the information, if they can't confirm that you can solve their problem based on your website, they're going to eliminate you as a choice.
Yeah. No, you're spot on with that. I want to go back to a point you made about how many architects don't believe in marketing. It is astounding to me. It's astounding to me, but it's also not, because we've been around for about a decade. And one of the first things we did and understood is, and this is maybe more of me coming from a small firm, Alex, my business partner, coming from a very big firm, which was Daniel Liebskin, world famous architect, right?
Yeah. And many of his buildings. That guy, his wife was the marketing person. He was the artist, 100%. So he already had this nice. He was doing the work. Or they were actually, he didn't believe in it, but she did. And then when the firm I was in was very small, and I distinctly remember this was after the crash. Somehow I still had a job, barely. And one of the things I was trying to do is we knew there was still government work, and my cousin works in this government agency who they would go after, not a government agency, but a private agency that they would go after government work, big contracts. And so I set up a meeting with him and this other, one of the principals of the firm I worked for at that time. And I distinctly remember his boss, my cousin's boss, asking my former bosses this question. And the question was, so how do you guys market yourself? And he could not answer. And I went, wow. That's why I'm number one. That's probably one of the main reasons why I'm going to get laid off, because these guys aren't like, are you guys even running a business? So you're totally right with that, and I think that's one of the things that we try to do with this podcast is it's okay to be a business person. It's okay to like and love capitalism. It's okay to make money and make a profit. You can still do great architecture and great design. Oh yeah. You don't have to sacrifice it. I think that's we need to get over the hump in this profession with that. Oh yeah. So I'm really glad you brought that up. So tell me about this. Go ahead. Let me just share a little anecdote about why I think most architects don't believe in marketing. I don't know if you're aware of this. But back in the early 1900s, the AIA had a rule that you could not advertise or promote your firm. And that rule was in place until the DOJ sued the AIA in the early 70s to force them from taking that rule out of their charter. And so if you think about the timing, back in the 70s, I mean, I know that's been a while now, but if you think about it, a lot of the young architects at that time were working under architects who had to deal with this rule, who couldn't promote themselves, and they were steadfast about reputation and relationships. And those younger guys learned that same thing. They're probably the guys that are, late in their careers now. And what I'm starting to see is that a lot of younger firms like yourselves are looking at different ways to promote themselves. And I find incredibly encouraging. And I think that is the right direction that the industry needs to go.
Yeah, that's an interesting anecdote. I'm glad you brought it up. If somebody was to look that up, how would they Google it? We try to get people to, while they're listening to us, like, hey, Google it.
Yeah, I think if you Google DOJ versus AIA, I think it was 1972, something like that. I don't know. I can probably give you I can look it up and give you the case name or
I
link.
found it.
Yeah, you got it? There you go.
I Googled. That's literally what I Googled, everybody. DOJ versus AIA 1972, and the PDF shows up right away. That's incredible. I would love to read on that when.
Yeah, there's there's some good articles around that that kind of explain the case. Like if you do a little bit more research on it, you'll find some good reference articles related to that case. So.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, what a weird sort of like self-censorship. That is incredible. Well, I'm glad we're moving on to that. So speaking of moving on to that, tell me a little bit more. Go dive a little bit more into this that you've looked into over 400 architecture firm websites. You know, what did you learn, and what were you surprised about the most?
So what happened was we got invited to this speed marketing event with AIA Fort Lauderdale. I think this is 2 years ago, no, about 2.5 years ago. And the idea was that the architects would be sitting at tables and the vendors would have like 3 minutes to introduce and pitch themselves. And we went to this event not knowing really what to expect. But like a couple of days before the event, I was like, you know, what are we going to do? We're just going to talk to them. And my wife is my business partner. We were trying to brainstorm what could we do. So I came up with this idea that there are some tools that you can use to test websites without having access to the website. And one of these tools is called grader.com. It's like website grader.com. But and it's a pretty basic tool. But what it does is it tests your website for 4 different metrics. The first one is website performance. How fast does your page load? The second is mobile responsiveness, or how well does it adapt to different screen sizes. The third is SEO optimization. So can Google read and index the information on your site so it knows how to rank you in search? And then finally, does your website have a valid SSL certificate? So I thought it would be an interesting way to test these. That, you know, we knew who was going to be in the room. We knew the architects who would be there. So we're like, let's put together a basic report that shows them what their grader score is. And we did this, and a lot of the results were really bad. I mean, really bad. Some of the lowest scores I've ever seen. And we went to this thing, and basically we had 3 minutes, and we showed them the report, and we said, this is what your website's doing. And, you know, this is kind of, you know, we explained to them what was going on, and basically we just used that 3 minutes, got their business card, and then we followed up with them, and we actually got a couple of clients out of it, which was good. But what that really showed us was that, you know, there was an opportunity here to kind of do more research, because we wanted to confirm, like, is that kind of across the board? Are all the websites that bad, or is it just this group, you know? So what started out as 50 turned it, or 25, sorry. We started out with about 20 or 25. I went back to the office. I told my assistant, I said, hey, I want you to test, you know, like 50 more sites. So she did. And we kind of saw a trend starting. So I said, okay, let's just keep going. And we downloaded a list of AIA member firms from our the state of Florida AIA chapters website, and we tested them all. and here's what just in a very small summary of what we found. Basically, on those 4 criteria, we found that only 95 of the sites that we looked at out of what's now 405. So 310 sites failed at least one of those criteria. And these criteria are important because they're criteria that Google looks at for ranking your site in search. And if you can't be found in search, then you're probably missing out on a lot of business opportunities.
Totally. I actually went to that website just now, and it's pretty fascinating. We failed the security part. So I went to website.grader.com. That's a cool tool. for sure. We're good on the rest of them. I said, and now it wants us to take it to great. So I don't know. I'll have to look at that. But
yeah, and security is actually something that a lot of sites fail on because it's actually pretty recent. It's only in the last couple of years. And one of the things is that when you don't have a proper SSL certificate on your site, that's what it's testing. When you don't have one of these certificates on your site, it makes your site more vulnerable to hacking attacks. And so Google looks at that, and if they see that you do not have that security certificate, they're going to downgrade your search results because they don't want to send people to your site if there's a risk that they could get hacked.
Yeah, that makes total sense, right?
Yeah, and it's one of the easiest things to fix. It really is. I don't know if I remember correctly. I think you guys are on Weebly or something like that, one of those platforms, right?
Yes.
It should be very easy to fix that. It's probably like either clicking a button or just contacting Weebly and saying, "Hey, how do I fix this?" It should be pretty easy.
Yeah. What is so you and I'm pretty sure already agree. It's important to have a good web presence, right? I mean, I don't know how you do business right now without a web presence.
Right.
We've always, and harking back to kind of that story I told you, that was one of my big learning lessons was, okay, I think we have opportunity to really crush here in Colorado, because if this former boss of mine is indicative of the architects, the community of architects in Colorado in general, then wow, we can capture a whole segment of marketing that nobody's taking on right now, and we have. So we will have received this last year, again, the highest rated architecture firm as far as customer service goes, according to all these websites. So we're on Thumbtack, we're on Google, we're on Facebook, Instagram, and many other platforms we can be on. And we always ask our clients, the ones who like us, most do, but for a 5-star review. And we're really adamant about that, right? And so it's paid dividends for us. So you and I agree about that it's good to have a good web presence, but why do can you tell everybody else why? They've already heard me say why they should have a good web presence. What would you tell architects listening to this podcast why it's important?
Well, okay, no matter how anybody finds out about your website, whether it's a referral or whether it's by a web search, your website is probably often the first or second impression that they're going to have of your firm. So if your site is confusing, if it's difficult to use, if the content on the site doesn't answer important questions for your visitors, if they can't find things like, basic things like your phone number, all of these things make them leave. Web browsers are very fickle. They don't want to waste time. We have this concept that we talk about where we tell people, do not make your website visitors have to think. As soon as they have to start thinking about how your site works or where the navigation items are, or even if a navigation item, like let's say you say profile instead of about us, that's confusing for people. Don't make them have to think about whether you mean about us or, just say about us. Make it as simple as you can, especially on your homepage. Your homepage should answer 3 important questions. It should answer what it is you do and who you do it for. It should answer what makes you different, and it should be very clear what they need to do next. So, like, what's the next step? Is it call us? Is it schedule a free consultation? Is it download this guide to working with an architect or some other valuable piece of information that they might want? Obviously, that's for us. That's the holy grail. Like, if you can get their email, then you can kind of continue that conversation. So So that's what we, when it comes to a web presence, it's such an important part. I said before, 84% of architectural, engineering, and construction buyers are going to websites to figure out if your firm is a good fit for them or not. And the other part of that research is that the same number of people are eliminating firms from consideration based on their website. So if you don't have a good web presence, you're basically, you're putting yourself out of contention with a lot of clients, a lot of potential clients.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, it's like we preach foundations and fundamentals all day long, and I think if you aren't doing those sort of things, you got to have a website first, 100%. I was trying to, we teach at CU Boulder as well, and we were trying to set up we're trying to do these field trips for our students, our upper-level students at the engineering center, and Alex, one of my tasks was to contact this firm out in Boulder who did this really great design on about an acre and a half in the middle of Boulder, beautiful landscape. Looks like it's a sustainable project. We're like, oh, that'd be perfect to go on a site visit there, teach the kids about, this and that. They don't have to see all our work. It's always good to network too. And I could not figure out how to contact that firm. So that was kind of it. I mean, it just kind of blew my mind. Like, what? Why even have a website? I really could not get a hold of them. It was insane to me. So, you got to get that done.
And an important thing to bring up is that your website is just one part of your web presence too, right? So you want to think about other ways that people can contact you. And like you said, you're on Thumbtack and HomeAdvisor and all these other sites. Those are good things to think about. Like we use a tool that allows us, for our clients, what we can do is basically there are what you call different types of business listings, right? So if you think about it, like Google My Business, are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Yeah. So Google My Business is considered a business listing, and there's there's hundreds of these types of business listings. The ones that you mentioned, like Thumbtack and HomeAdvisor and Houzz, those are what we call premium business listings, and they're usually pay-to-play type things, or you have to advertise to really get noticed on them. But there are a lot of free business listings out there, things like Yelp and TripAdvisor, which isn't as relevant to architects, but your Facebook page, your LinkedIn page. But there's others that are like tied into mobile apps and maps and things like that. So we use a tool where we're able to basically control, lock the information, but also control the information that's on, I think it's like 75 different listing services across the web. And that's a key indicator for Google, because Google sees that as a sign. Like when you have all that information, what we call the name, address, and phone number information, when it's a consistent across so many different sites, that's a sign to Google that you're taking care of your business information, that you're keeping it consistent and up to date. And that's also what we call it. That's an SEO authority indicator for Google. So that's another way that your web presence beyond your website can also help you. It can help you get found. It can help you raise your search ranking as well. Yeah.
That was another thing. Yeah, when I, again, harking back to, when we started our firm and trying to learn from the mistakes that led to us being laid off, one of the things was that, I looked at, okay, if we're going to start a firm in the little town that we operate in, who are our competitors? What's their web presence like? And thankfully, they had none. They were not taking advantage of Google My Business. So I'm really proud of the fact that it was just a layup for us to get involved with Google that way. And we're like, nobody's looking in the phone book anymore. They're all going to Google to try to find somebody just on their smartphones and everything. So now you Google Architect Longmont, boom, number one result, and we get calls because of it. I mean, it's just great. Tell me about this 3-phase growth system that you've developed.
Yeah, so as we've gotten to know more architects and we see how they work, what we realized is that, we needed a strategic framework to help architects. And so we devised this thing we call the 3-phase growth system. It's visualized as a pyramid. So at the base of the pyramid, you have the first component, which is called experience. So this really refers to your brand, your website, the touch points that people have with your firm. So that could include your visual identity, obviously. It could include your proposals and things like that. But usually we're talking about the initial touch points, how they're getting introduced to your firm. And we call this experience because the focus really is about creating a great branding and website experience so that visitors can easily grasp what you do, who you do it for. Those 3 questions I said before that you have to answer: what you do, who you do it for, what makes your firm different from others, and what's that kind of gets to your unique selling proposition. And then the third question was, what do they need to do next? Like, do they call you? Do they schedule a meeting? Do they download something? So, because it's a longer term buying cycle, that kind of thing. So that's really the experience part, is building that great first impression so that they feel comfortable, that they can get to know a little bit about you. Maybe they can see a little bit about your culture through your website firm, see who works there, see that you've got a good team, kind of get to like you a little bit, and then also see that you have maybe done some things. You've got testimonials, or you might have awards that you've won, things like that on your site that build trust, right? So that know, like, and trust experience. The second phase of the pyramid, is that middle part, which we call engagement. Engagement is all about creating content on your website, maybe in the form of blog articles, case studies, FAQs, any kind of content that helps position your firm as a go-to firm, as either experts or authorities in whatever it is you do. Now, some firms are specialized where they're very niche focused, and some are more generalist. So you want to try to define what you're best at, what your area of expertise is, either around the type of service or service level that you provide, or maybe as a specific niche specialty. So that involves, generally, the easiest way to do that is to create great content like blog articles. That's usually where we work with a lot of clients. Case studies are also, good case studies are also a great way to communicate that authority and expertise. So that's the engagement part. And then at the top of the pyramid is what we call attraction. So here what we're doing is looking at ways to increase traffic to your website. Just as a general rule, we typically look at LinkedIn as a kind of a good source for B2B opportunities, because we have ways on LinkedIn, the way the tool's set up, we have ways of targeting specific type of people. We can look at specific industries, specific job titles, specific companies, and we can look to help architects build relationships through LinkedIn directly by connecting with people, sending them direct messages, or promoting content on their LinkedIn profiles and business pages that kind of focus on a niche or focus on the type of client they're looking for. When it comes to residential, that's probably where you might use things like, like you mentioned, House or Home Advisor. Thumbtack are good resources for residential work. Facebook ads can also be a way to kind of get at those kind of customers. And then also, obviously, Instagram is another way.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you for explaining that. So out of all those, out of everything so far, it sounds like obviously I would encourage anybody listening to take a look at your guys' website and think about getting in touch with you guys as they're thinking about rebranding and just refocusing on how they can be better business people from a marketing standpoint. But what is one thing right now? Just at this moment, and as soon as we get done with this podcast, people can jump off it. What could they do? What is one thing they could do to improve their branding or marketing?
Well, I'll give you two. The first is go test your website, right? Go test your website. Use a tool like Grader. If you want, you can also we will take the Grader tools report, but we also have other components we look at, like your Google keywords and how you're ranking in search, and then we also test your business listings, and we call this thing our website action audit. To get that, all you need to do is send me an email. Send it to Bryon, Bryon, at Archmark, ARCHMARK.co. If you send me an email, tell me you heard about us through Inside the Firm and that you'd like a website action audit, I'd be happy to prepare that report for you. Usually it just takes maybe a day or two to put that together. And we'll kind of give you a rundown of what we think of your site. We look at your homepage, we look at your Grader score, we look at your SEO, and then your business listings, and it's a pretty complete report. And we give you some detailed summary of things you can do to change your website. So that's one thing. I would definitely test your website, either using Grader or contacting us. The other thing, and I think this is even more important, is you have to think about your clients and how they're perceiving you as a firm through these different touch points. So if we look at the website first, right, the homepage becomes extraordinarily important. One of the main reasons we focus so much attention on the homepage is that often web visitors will decide, they'll make a decision about your firm, and Google's done research on this. I think it's something like half a second they'll form an impression of your firm. So the moment your website loads, in less than the blink of an eye, they're already making a determination about whether or not you're right for them, what kind of impression they're getting from you. The other thing is that when your website's not easy to use, and I always focus on the website because I think that's really one of the key components here. But when your website's difficult to use, if they leave, if they have to start thinking about how to figure out your website, they're just going to leave and they're going to go back to Google. They're going to search again, and they're going to find other websites to go to. And if somebody else is out there doing a better job with their website and convincing them in 3 to 5 seconds that they should look further into the website, you're going to lose that opportunity. So those are two.
Those are great.
Yeah. Just think about it from your client's perspective.
And neither of those cost you anybody any money, right? I mean, they can just get right on those sort of things. Yeah, I think those are great.
Yeah.
So tell me.
Yeah.
Go
exactly. Ahead. They're just free things, I mean, you can go to Grader.com right now. You can test your website for free. You can get at least a sense of what you're doing right or wrong. And then just thinking about things like, what I often tell clients when they first start talking to us is, I will often ask them, well, what are the first questions your clients ask you? If you can answer those questions in your website, you've just saved yourself a lot of time, and you've probably also done a good job of maybe weeding out some of the people who wouldn't be good clients in the first place.
Agreed, 100%. Yeah, I think there's that kind of testing that needs to happen immediately. I mean, everybody knows. I mean, you want people you want to work with, people that are going to pay you what you believe you're worth, and what you need to be profitable. So I think that'd be great. Why don't we wrap things up, because we're coming up on an hour here, Bryon, and tell us a little bit about what's on the horizon for you and the Archmark team, what's next, and then how people can get in touch with you guys if they would like to engage with you.
Yeah, so for us, like I told you about this study that we're doing that we've done where we've tested 405 websites so far over, I think it's been just a little bit over a year now. We try to do a batch of them each month. And we're now looking at kind of a phase 2 of this study where we've been looking at how different questions that we can ask architects about their websites. So this is giving us more detail and information about the state of architecture web presence, and I would invite anybody who's interested in getting their website tested and helping us out with this research to get in contact with us through our website, www.archmark.co, and reach out to us. We'd love to include you on our study as we branch out into version 2.0 in the coming year, and then you'll also get some great insights about your website, a little bit more detail than the current website action audit that we've been doing in the last year. So it's that's kind of what's on our horizon. Obviously, we're looking to get more opportunities to speak to architects and so forth. So anybody who wants to, if they want to talk to us, you can go to our website, www.archmark.co, and it's schedule-time-with-us. So you can schedule a 15-20-minute call with us to talk about issues going on in your business, and we'd be happy to talk to you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thanks so much for your insight today, Bryon. It was a pleasure to have you on. I'm glad that you contacted me through LinkedIn. Bryon actually critiqued our website a little bit when we first engaged. And what was hilarious is I'm not in charge of the website, just for the record. Alex is in charge of the website. He's done a great job. But I like the tools that you mentioned in the podcast, and I'm going to make sure that whenever I do an interview on this podcast, then he listens to it, and whenever he does an interview, then I listen to it, and then we actually learn quite a bit from our guests that we have on. So I would love to see what Alex has to say about those tools and everything.
I think I shared this with you, but I thought the new website, because you recently redid it, I thought it was much improved. So I was happy to see that, and I think I don't know if I retested it yet. I'll have to do that and send you one of our reports, and then you can then maybe me and Alex can have a discussion. We can do a live critique or something like that.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, I mean, we're always open to improvement. Why not? We're here to crush. So thanks again for having being on today, and
absolutely
appreciate it. And we'll have to have you back on again. So have a good one.
Thank you so much. Yeah. All right. Take care. Have a great day.